Today's lesson. Figure out what to do with your products before making them. Because I'd continued attending the Horror Motion Picture Conservatory's spring season, which was focused on writing and directing, in the summer of 2011, during season 3, I got an opportunity to direct a short film through the school's production company, Horror Motion Pictures. I wrote a comedy about a friend interested in someone who didn't give him the time of day whatsoever, and did my best to cast it based on people who were in that season of the film school. I submitted my request for who to cast for the roles, and I got both of my first choices for the male leads, Ammon, one of the ATAC 5, and Harrison, a friend of a friend that I'd known since elementary school. But due to a scheduling conflict, I ended up with my second choice for the female lead. That one scheduling conflict ended up changing my life significantly because I became friends with and ended up dating the woman who played that female lead for over a year, but that's another story. Day 1, July 15th, 2011. By the summer after my junior year of high school, I didn't want to spend much time at home because things were getting more difficult there, but I was happy to plan an overnight trip into the production schedule so I didn't have to be at home. Plan of Action had 2 production days at Harrison's family's cabin, a cabin we spent the night at that night on various beds and couches. Harrison and his family were very generous to let us stay there, and the location gave the characters a visually pleasing environment to inhabit. That can be important for films. Michael Buffo was the director of photography, and his, at the time, girlfriend Brittany produced, so I was able to focus on telling the story and coaching the actors, although I operated the camera a few times as well. We shot 6 scenes that first day, and it was hectic. I pushed for excellence however I could, doing multiple takes if we didn't get it right the first couple times, pulling actors aside to coach them if they needed it, holding bounce boards myself for extra light, what they call Hollywooding something, and a lot more. And basically found myself exhausted by the end of the day. But we'd gotten everything we planned to shoot. I slept on a couch in the cabin that night, and then day 2, July 16th, 2011. We got back to shooting in the morning, working mainly on the montage scene, 4B, which took about as much time as the other 6 scenes combined. Word to the wise, avoid montages if you don't have the production budget or the time. They're some of the most costly sequences in films. When the final day of production at the cabin came to an end, Ammon and I were driving away through the golden hour sunset, everything shot but the scenes with the teacher, which were scheduled for that coming Wednesday, and I thought about how I'd taken people away from their normal lives for 2 days to make this film, and I hoped it would be worth the work and the sacrifice. Day 3, July 20th, 2011. This was the final day of shooting Plan of Action. Our first scene, Scene 2, took place at the Carmel High School parking lot, and an actress playing Miss Sternhold herds the kids in the parking lot and gets things organized for the trip. I gave myself a cameo, the choking to death on my own libido line, because as a 17-year-old I felt that way on a daily basis, and I gave Tyler a line in that scene too, which meant 3 of the ATAC 5 appeared in that film, so that made me happy. We returned to the cabin location to shoot scene 4.2C, Miss Sternhold drinking a beverage that's spiked. I ended up cutting that scene from the remaster of the film because once I got to college, I found that the implications around spiking a drink were worse than I'd imagined. As a high schooler, I hadn't seen that in real life yet, so it seemed funnier than it did once I had more context. After that, we shot scene 4.4A, Mrs. Sternhold in a nightgown/bathrobe with green face mask and cucumbers and whatever on her face. Adam enters and says, "Hey there," thinking it's Stacy. And Miss Sternhold turns around, revealing it's her and not Stacy, and scaring him out of the house. Based on the audience reaction, it was one of the funniest scenes in the film. Our last scene in the film, scene 4.1A, Adam ties a rope to a rowboat, Stacy gets into it, and Adam tips it over. He goes to dive into the water to rescue Stacy, and is pushed out of the way by Mrs. Sternhold, who runs ahead of him and dives in the water first. She saves her, pulls her out of the water, and it involved Selena, Ammon, and Vicky all getting fully submerged in the lake, and I was happy we got it in one shot because waiting for everyone to dry off to shoot it again would not have been possible. And in that moment, it felt good to get the film done, although I was still a little worried about how it would turn out in the editing room. AMP Studios became the new location for the Horror Motion Picture Conservatory's final summer classes, and I spent my first days there editing Plan of Action. I ended up using the music from a friend of mine's band, Sam from Population 5, to bring the film together. I was really happy about being able to collaborate like that, hopefully pushing his career forward as well as my own. August 19th and 20th, 2011, the film premiered, 2 screenings in 2 days at AMP Studios. It felt similar to the Instructions Not Included premiere. People dressed up in suits and dresses, took photos with the cast, crew, and their friends, but it was on a smaller scale because it was a series of shorts rather than a feature, and there were 2 screenings, so the audience size was split between the 2 days. My film was very well received from my understanding. All the shorts were, for the most part, but I had no plan for it after that day. Now, I didn't get in trouble for this because I was still in school, so there was no one funding that film who would be disappointed by its lack of awards. However, I discovered if you don't submit a short film to film festivals, it's often seen as a failure because it didn't pick up any awards. But there's not even potential to win awards without paying for festival submissions. So essentially, if a short film is underfunded to the point that film festival submissions are not an option, it will be seen as a failure almost inherently. This doesn't apply to feature films necessarily because they can still be picked up for distribution deals, but short films largely seem to be about either awards or proof of concept for making a feature. One of the things I wish I'd been able to do differently is I would have submitted every film I ever released to multiple film festivals. Unfortunately, the majority of my short films have never been submitted to any film festivals due to my own financial constraints, so I'll never know how they would have done against the competition or what awards they may or may not have won. If you have money, don't make that mistake. In general, any product in any industry needs a plan to reach its audience, reach profitability, or however you're measuring success. But anyway, that's my lesson story and fun facts for the day. I tried to include info for friends, filmmakers, students, festival goers, entrepreneurs, and more. So hopefully you learned something along the way.
The Stein has a plan.
I'm a leather man.